Hello and welcome. This is Notibot ENG. Tonight, we bring you live updates from the Middle East where tensions are escalating with Iran. The US has made a proposal to Tehran, but will it be enough to ease the crisis? We'll take you through the latest developments on the Iranian war, the fragile ceasefire in Lebanon and Iraq, and the growing stakes for global trade. Also, we'll examine Donald Trump's efforts to find a solution to the conflict and how China is positioning itself in the region. Let's dive into tonight's news recap. As tensions escalate between Iran and the United States, a developing crisis in the Middle East takes center stage with a critical diplomatic proposal. Iran is considering an American proposal to end the war in the region after President Trump threatened to restart strikes. This development comes as tensions between Washington and Tehran remain high. According to a report by the New York Times, Iran is reviewing a U.S. plan to de-escalate the conflict, which was first proposed by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo last year. The proposal includes measures such as increased economic cooperation and diplomatic efforts to resolve long-standing disputes between the two countries. The escalation of tensions began in January when the U.S. withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, a nuclear agreement reached with Iran in 2015. Since then, there have been multiple incidents of military clashes between Iranian forces and the U.S.-led coalition in Iraq. In recent days, the situation has worsened after the U.S. disabled an Iranian-flagged tanker, known as the Adrian Dory, off the coast of Gibraltar. The incident was seen as a significant escalation of tensions between Washington and Tehran. Meanwhile, Israeli forces struck targets near Beirut, Lebanon, early yesterday morning. The attacks were widely condemned by regional leaders and sparked fears of wider conflict in the region. The situation remains fluid, with both sides continuing to exchange threats and warnings. Iran has vowed to retaliate against any U.S. strike, while the Trump administration has threatened to take military action if Tehran continues to defy international pressure. As tensions escalate in the Middle East, concerns are growing over the stability of a fragile ceasefire, with Iranian proxies playing a key role. The situation in Iraq and Lebanon remains volatile as U.S. pressure mounts on key allies to take action against Iranian proxies. In recent weeks, a number of attacks have been attributed to groups linked to Iran, including the Kata'ibi Hezbollah militia in Iraq and the Hezbollah party in Lebanon. These groups have been responsible for strikes targeting U.S. military personnel and coalition forces in Iraq, which has put pressure on Washington to respond. The Islamic Republic's allies in Baghdad and Beirut are under growing pressure to crack down on these proxy groups, with the U.S. threatening to impose sanctions on any officials who fail to cooperate. The situation is complex and sensitive, but at its core, it's about protecting American lives and maintaining a fragile ceasefire that has held since 2020. The Iranian-backed militias have taken advantage of the conflict in Syria and Yemen to build strength and infrastructure, making them a significant threat to regional stability. President Joe Biden has made it clear that the U.S. will not tolerate attacks on its personnel or interests in Iraq, and is working closely with Iraqi leaders to take action against these proxy groups. In Lebanon, Prime Minister Najib Mikati has been under pressure from Washington to crack down on Hezbollah, which has long been a thorn in the side of the U.S. and its allies. The fate of this fragile ceasefire hangs in the balance, and it remains to be seen how far Washington will push for action against these proxy groups. One thing is certain, however, the U.S. will not stand idly by while Iranian-backed militias threaten American lives and regional stability. As tensions between the U.S. and Iran continue to escalate, President Trump is seeking a last-ditch solution to bring an end to the conflict. Good evening, and welcome to our news recap. The U.S.-Iran conflict has been escalating for months, with tensions at a boiling point. President Trump is now attempting to increase economic pressure on Iran in an effort to bring about a resolution. The plan involves imposing harsher sanctions on Iranian oil exports, which would significantly impact the country's economy and the global energy market. However, sources close to the negotiations tell us that Iran's government is unlikely to make a deal without significant concessions from the U.S. The reason for this reluctance lies in Tehran's history of being forced into agreements that have ultimately failed or backfired. A notable example was the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, also known as the Iran nuclear deal, which was negotiated by former President Barack Obama and other world leaders. Despite its initial success, the agreement collapsed under pressure from hardline factions within Iran. This experience has led Iran's government to become increasingly wary of making deals that could be perceived as humiliating or compromising their sovereignty. As a result, any negotiations with the U.S. will likely require significant concessions from Washington in order for an agreement to be reached. With no clear indication of what these concessions might look like, it remains uncertain whether a deal can actually be struck. The situation is further complicated by rising tensions between the U.S. and its allies, particularly in Europe. A failure to resolve the crisis could have far-reaching consequences for global security and the international order. As tensions in the Middle East continue to simmer, analysts are now turning their attention to a potential diplomatic breakthrough that could have far-reaching implications. Top Trump advisors urge China to leverage Iran ties to reopen Strait of Hormuz to global traffic. According to a report by Euronews, top advisors from the US and European Union are urging China to use its growing ties with Iran to persuade Saudi Arabia to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to global shipping. The strait is a vital waterway that connects the Middle East to Europe and Asia, and its closure has significant implications for global trade. China's President Xi Jinping met with Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi in Beijing last week, marking a significant boost to their strategic partnership. U.S. officials are now urging China to use this leverage to persuade Saudi Arabia to lift its blockade of the strait, which has been in place since 2019. The closure of the strait has had a major impact on global trade, with many countries relying on it for access to key markets and resources. The EU's top trade official, Valdis Dombrovskis, is urging China to use its influence to persuade Saudi Arabia to reopen the waterway. This is a critical issue for global trade and security, Dombrovskis said in a statement. We urge all parties to work together to resolve this matter. U.S. officials are also weighing in on the issue, with some warning that China's failure to use its leverage could damage its relationships with key allies. The reopening of the strait would be a significant victory for global trade and security, but it is unclear whether China will be able to persuade Saudi Arabia to lift its blockade. As tensions escalate over regional security, Iran's leadership is pushing back against a proposed United Nations resolution backed by the United States. A draft resolution backed by the U.S. and Gulf allies has been put forth at the United Nations aimed at pressuring Iran to guarantee safe shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The proposal has been met with strong opposition from Iran's permanent mission to the UN, which describes it as flawed and politically motivated. The Iranian mission claims that the U.S. is attempting to advance its own political agenda rather than resolving the crisis. The draft resolution is being pushed by a group of countries including the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. However, Iran maintains that the only viable solution in the Strait of Hormuz is a permanent end to the war, the lifting of the maritime blockade, and the restoration of normal passage. The Iranian mission has accused the U.S. of attempting to legitimize unlawful actions rather than working towards a peaceful resolution. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz remains tense due to ongoing conflict between Iran and a coalition of countries led by the U.S. In recent months, there have been numerous incidents involving naval vessels and cargo ships, including the seizure of oil tankers and the downing of an American drone. The international community is concerned about the potential for miscalculation and the risk of escalation in the region. The UN draft resolution has sparked concerns that it may be used as a tool to pressure Iran into submission rather than working towards a genuine diplomatic solution. As tensions remain high, the international community will be watching closely to see how this situation unfolds. That's all for today's news recap. We'll continue to bring you updates on the ongoing Iran crisis as more information becomes available. If you'd like to stay up to date with the latest developments, be sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.